I have two male relatives who are older than I am. I'm 58. Um, it has occurred to me that I know some stories about my family, about my father's side of the family and my mother's side of the family, that perhaps no one else knows. And some of the stories are funny, and some of them are touching, I think. And I hope most of them are interesting. And it seemed to me, and I talked with Adam and Paul, my two sons, uh, that maybe this would be a good way to keep those alive, and then also perhaps to keep me alive in case I ever die, which I frankly don't expect to do. But, who knows? At any rate. So I'm going to start and try to keep the family tree straight, but I don't know if I will. I'll try. I knew two of my great-grandfathers. That makes me very unusual. I also knew all four of my grandparents. So I'll talk about all of them in some detail or little detail, whatever. On my mother's side of the family, I knew my great-grandfather, Drachler, who was my grandmother's father. And he and his wife were innkeepers in Russia. And he was drafted into the Russian army and became the only Jew in the Tsar's Imperial Guard, which was at that time quite an honor. And he was drafted because I think the draft then was 6 years in that country. So at the end of 6 years, he came back and he had a whole beard and he had the whole uniform of the Tsar's Imperial Guard, and his wife didn't recognize him. So he seduced her. He was a charming, elegant man. I knew him well. He died when he was in his late 90s, and he was a wonderful man. I'll tell about him in a minute, but I want to tell that first. When he came back from the army, he and his wife began to run the inn again. And then the pogroms started in Russia, and the Cossacks, and there were a lot of killings, and he decided it was time to split. So he sold the inn, and he and his wife and their three children, my grandmother was the oldest, had a carriage, and they had furs, and they were wealthy. They had jewels, everything. And they started to go from Russia, where they were, to, they wanted to go to America, so they were going to Hamburg, Germany, where they were going to get the boat. By the time they got to Hamburg, from all the bribes and everything, they had nothing left. They were dead broke. They had enough money for their passage to America, and that was it. So that's when they came here. I guess it was in the 1880s.
To New York?
To New York, yeah. And I think that's where they lived. I don't really know. That's just those stories I didn't hear. My grandfather, Grandpa Shary, was from Kurland, which was in Western Russia, or really East Prussia or Poland, in that area, up near Lithuania and Estonia and Latvia. He did speak German. That was a second language for him, so he got rid of his accent. He spoke almost, he didn't speak correct English, but he spoke it without too much accent. He always gave you wet kisses, I remember. It was always sloppy. He'd kiss you and you wipe it off, I can smell it. It's 55 years, I guess, 50 years since he ever kissed me that way. And I still remember the feel of it, the taste of it, and the smell of it. Yeah, not good. So I was talking about my great-grandfather, Zaida. My grandma and Grandpa Shary got married, and so on and so forth. They had 4 children. The oldest was Sam, I'll talk about him later, and Francis, and my mother and Dory. But going back to Zaida, Zaida used to come and visit when I must have been 6, 7, 8, or 9, somewhere. It must have been older than 6, because my sister wasn't born until I was 6. So I'm almost 7 years older than she is. At any rate, I remember Zaida used to come to our house every Sunday. He lived in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and he would leave there, and he would go by the Hudson Tubes, which was an underground, like a subway, and he'd come to New York, and then he'd get in a subway, and he'd drive right up to the Bronx, where we lived, and he would get to our apartment at 8 o'clock every Sunday morning. And he never saw my mother, never saw my father. He came and spent an hour with my sister and myself. I don't know what we talked about because I don't think he talked very much English. But he was there, and he would just watch us play, I guess. And my mother would have a glass so he could have tea, and she'd leave. She had a special set of dishes for him so that they were kosher, because we didn't keep a kosher house, but he did. He was okay. You know, he would eat in our house, but he made sure that we had special dishes for him. He would eat a little pickled herring or whatever my mother would leave for him. And he did that for literally years. And I was talking to Joel the other day, and Joel said he used to come and visit him every Sunday too. So he visited his great-grandchildren. Well, I guess we were the only two, by that time we were the only, no, we were the only two males, I guess, I don't know. At any rate, so that was that. That's about Zaida. He was terrific. Very straight, nice beard. When I wore my beard, I looked like him. So the pictures, I have pictures of Zaida and myself up in Pleasantdale, New Jersey. So that's that side of the family. I never knew my great-grandmother. She died before I was born.